we capture everything. So welcome back, everybody, officially. I appreciate everyone's flexibility and being willing to meet on Zoom. For those of you who do not have children, the way that it works here is that Iowa City schools will automatically shut down if the forecast for the feels like temperature, which is a combination of air temperature and wind speed, is lower than a certain point. And my son's school follows the same rules, which means that I get to be on parenting duty with basically no notice. So thank you for allowing me to be both your instructor today and mommy intermittently as need be. He understands that I'm teaching, and hopefully Nintendo will keep him occupied, but you never know. He comes to bother me sometimes. I shouldn't say bother. He comes to ask for my assistance with web searches. Like, Mommy, how do I get that one to be how I want it? And then, 17 follow-up questions later, I get the keywords from him to search with. So I may have to help him find out how to beat a certain villain or something like that, but hopefully we'll be otherwise able to get our business done. So we have a new TA who has joined us. Lexi, where are you? I lost your picture.
I'm right here.
There
Can
you
see
are.
me now?
Okay. Yes, I haven't shared the screen yet, so you should be able to say, introduce yourself, please.
Hi, I'm Lexi. I'm a third year student in the Educational Measurement and Statistics program. I've taken every single class that Lisa has offered, I believe, because I love her teaching. So you guys are in great hands. I plan on graduating this semester, so I've been working really hard. And Lisa had offered me a teaching experience that I wouldn't want to pass up. So that's why I'm here. I'm really excited to be here to help you guys. I will be doing office hours on Wednesdays. So definitely pop in. And I can also set up the Zoom as well as being in person. So I'll be here, I promise.
Okay. Yes. Her office hours are going to be on Wednesdays 2 to 4. So now we have every day of the week covered across 3 different TAs and myself. So that should hopefully help folks find assistance when they need it. And Lexi is fluent in SAS and R. Can I say that?
A little bit of ours. We're friends, but we're not really the best of friends.
Okay, so she's acquaintances with R. She's friends with SAS. Yeah, I'm besties with SAS, and like R is like the annoying neighbor that I have to get along with. But yeah. we're in good hands. So thank you for stopping by. I won't make you stay for the rest of the show. But
okay, have a great one, everyone. Bye.
All right, thank you. So let me get the screen share going. So we've got, I updated the syllabus with her contact information and her Zoom link for those times. I also updated the printable version of the syllabus to have that information and to reflect how we've been spending our first week of classes. So a couple of things that I think I said quickly at the end of class, but I want to make sure that I say. This syllabus that's printable, I don't update it all that frequently. I keep the one that's on this webpage up to date every single day I'm on it, making sure that everything is current. The one that's printable, though, I tend to do only when there's major changes. So this is the one that you should refer to that's on this page predominantly. And the other thing, that there were questions at the end of class about the readings. So for instance, next week I have 3 readings listed on Tuesday. I do not expect you to have read them on Tuesday. It's just that those are the references that go with the unit. So lecture and example 2, for instance. And I actually would suggest, if you're planning on doing the reading, that you wait. Let me introduce you to the topic first, because then you know what you're going to be reading about. And I think it will go better, because then you'll have a place to kind of hang those details on in terms of a mental representation. And there's not a super lot of references relative to some of my other classes because the textbook is so dense, but a lot of these things are just extra things that I thought would be useful. It's not like if you can't get to it right away that you're going to suffer as a result. It's not like that kind of readings where I'm going to ask questions about the readings and you have to have had them. They're just for your resources. So that should make it a little bit more manageable. In terms of work to do, your first formative assessment is due Monday night. I very much hope that we'll get through all of the questions that are on it by the end of class today. And just as a reminder, these things should not take very long. It's 1 or 2 sentences per question. It's fine to consult your notes. The last question on there, though, I think deserves a little bit more explanation. The 4th question on there is that I'm asking for your theme song. So I want to get to know each of you a little bit better. The idea is if you played a professional sport and you were brought, into the game or into the match, what's playing overhead to announce your arrival? Like what would be your theme song? It can be any language, any genre, just anything that comes to mind that would describe like this is how I'm feeling right now. This is my get up and go. And if you're willing, if you would be willing to share a YouTube link, I will put together a compilation for our class of everyone's theme songs so that you can see what people picked. I won't say whose is whose. Maybe you can guess. But if you're willing to play, please let me know. And if you'd rather not share your theme song, then just say that and I won't put it on there. I would say that there's no incorrect answers, except that one time somebody put down Christmas music. And I was like, yeah, I'm sorry. That's incorrect. I can't accept Silent Night as a theme song. I just can't, right? So anything else, though, is fair game. So give that some thoughts. I change mine every semester. So I have a few percolating, and I'll let you know what mine is as well. So any questions about any of that stuff? Nope? Okay, great. Well, then we will keep moving along in the interest of efficiency. We have a few slides left in Lecture 0 to take care of, and then we have Lecture 1. So I have started us at slide 17 on Lecture 0. That's relatively about where we left off, talking about prerequisite material and then what this class is going to be about. All right, we ready to go? With me? Cool. So for anyone who is feeling rusty or shaky or not sure if they know all of the bullet points on this slide, we are going to review these things. If you feel like you need a deeper introduction than what we have time to do in this class, I would refer you to another class where I have videos and materials that you can access as well. So this semester, we're going to focus on the general linear model. What is that? Now I'm going to say that everything on the next slide, it may look like word salad to you, and that is fine. But by the end of the semester, I want you to look back at the slide and be like, yeah, and we did all that stuff, cool. And if anyone asks you what we're going to cover this semester, this is the slide you can send them to describe it. So the general linear model is an umbrella term that captures a whole bunch of specific instances in which there are different names based on what type of variables are involved as predictors. So predictor versus outcome is a term that I haven't talked about yet, but basically predictors are variables that you put into your model as explainers, as reasons why something would have occurred, and the thing you're trying to explain would be an outcome. So the models we're covering in this class are for quantitative variables as the outcome, and quantitative variables that are supposed to be continuous. So things like test scores, response time, things that are continuous numeric variables. So then there's different combinations of what the models are called based on what type of predictor variable that they have. And this is what these terms we're going to go over in more detail today. So this is just sort of a big picture. What are we going to talk about? It's okay if you haven't heard of any of these terms before. If you have, then hopefully this will link to things that you already know and things that we're going to be talking about. And I will give you the caveat that the way that I teach this material may be different than what other people do because I'm doing it from the perspective of how do you need to know this to move on? Because I'm used to teaching the upper level PhD courses, and from that lens, I try to think about, okay, what are the component skills, vocabulary that I want people to have in order to be able to add more things to it in the future. So my approach might be a little bit different, but it's for a reason, I promise you. So what kind of data can you learn to analyze in this class is one thing that I want to talk about, because it may be the case that the type of data that you see in your world of research does not fall into this category. So I want to be clear as to what you will learn how to do and what you'll need to take further courses in if you have different kinds of data than that. So first off, sample versus population. The idea that what are we eventually trying to talk about, like a population. It's more of a hypothetical construct than something that you would ever have a chance of observing, unless you make up data for a living like I do. So the best case that we have is a sample of observations from any type of population. So we're dealing with one data set, one sample of units here, and I have a star here as to what units is. So we're sampling people, or we might be sampling organizations. People in biology may be sampling rats or mice. People in other parts of biology might be sampling plants. Unit is a generic word that means any of those things. In my language, because I'm used to teaching social scientists, I tend to say people. But just know that if your unit of observation is something else, most likely this still applies. So in looking at this text box, do any of you think that organizations would be a better word for what you're used to studying? Like schools, countries, or is it all about the people? People? Because people could be children, people could be teachers, people could be older adults, people could be youth, adolescents. People are people. Okay, so we'll stick with people then, but just know that sample and units are more general terms. So in terms of thinking about types of samples, let's say hypothetically that someone's doing a research study about graduate life and they're collecting self-report survey measures based on which program you're in academically, your levels of stress, and your current status in terms of your well-being. So what kinds of samples we might collect then? Well, do we want to examine differences between program, or do we want to simply control for which program you're in? If I selected only one academic program and only people from that type of program, then there is no possible way that program could be something that I put in an analysis, because program would be a constant, not a variable. If we wanted to look at differences between programs in stress and well-being, at a minimum, we'd have to select more than one. But we might want to generalize further and select programs from different departments, different colleges, maybe even different universities. Another way to think about sampling then is, well, how much data do we need to get from somebody to make an accurate characterization of how they are? Is asking them survey questions one time sufficient? Or should we ask them the same questions every day for a week? Or should we follow them throughout the semester? And how much do we trust the information that that person is telling us? Self-report data, of course, have many problems in terms of how people respond for reasons that have nothing to do with what you're studying. So might we want to have some kind of converging evidence? Maybe we collect data from people who are familiar with your subjects, like their partners or their family or their advisors. So as we head into more and more depth of data, we're starting to hit a transition point between what would be characterized as an independent sample versus a dependent sample. And dependent is a keyword that means you're going to need something else besides what's in this class, something additional to the models that we're going to learn. Another synonym for that is dependent data. So to make this a little bit more explicit then, examples of dependent data. Let's say that we had multiple people from multiple programs and a bunch of programs here. So to the extent that people who come from the same academic program have variables that are more related, then we would say that that data is clustered or nested. Those are synonyms. The idea is that the outcomes from people who are part of the same group are going to be more alike than people from different groups. So the term dependency is a synonym for relationship, correlation. If outcomes are more related for people from the same group, then that is dependency. Too fast. Similarly, if I decide that a one-shot assessment is inadequate and I want to follow somebody over time to get a better view of how they function, then we're talking about repeated measures or longitudinal data. So if I ask you the same questions every day for a week or a semester, the observations from the same person are going to be more related than observations from different people. That's a higher amount of dependency or correlation that's induced by asking the same person the same things over and over again. And also, if there are multiple reporters, so if I'm measuring child behavior and I ask the child's parents and I ask the child's teachers, then the responses from those different people about the same child are going to be more related than responses about different children. And also, responses that come from teachers might be more related in general than responses that come from parents. So there's different kinds of dependency possible yet. So the good news and the bad news with respect to that. This class, the models that we're going to learn are designed for independent data only, where there's none of these additional relationships because of the way that you've measured something repeatedly. So they're univariate models where each person is supposed to be like its own thing, and we're predicting a numeric outcome. That's the bad news. The good news is that you're not stuck with that. So everything that I'm going to teach you, that you're going to learn, is a key building block that you can add other building blocks to get you where you need. So I warned you on the first class, like slide 1, that I was going to try to convince you, right, that this is a new way of life for you. It's continuing the sales pitch, but it may be out of necessity. So the course that meets right before this, General Linear Models, is designed for samples that are also independent, but in which you need to predict outcome variables that are not continuous. So if you want to predict whether or not somebody graduates high school, if you want to predict a count for the number of observations of deviant behavior, if you want to predict percent correct on a test score where you're likely to see pileups of kids who do well due to ceiling effects, all of those things are examples of not normal outcomes that will be better served by the models that we cover in that class. If you are going to have repeated measures data, longitudinal data, there's a class for that. Multi-level models is what that's called, or mixed effects models. If you're going to have clustered data, so students nested within teachers, teachers nested within schools, that kind of setup, there's a class for that, clustered multi-level or mixed effects models. And if you're concerned about using a single observation as a way to indicate someone's standing on something, and you think that you'd be better served to have multiple observations, like multiple items on a test or multiple measures of the same idea, that's not on this slide, but that is addressed in structural equation models, which is yet another course that you could sign up for. So I want to be clear about what you can and can't do when you get out of this class. We're going to predict continuous numeric outcomes in independent samples. And if you want to apply these methods to dependent samples or to outcomes that are not numeric continuous variables, you're going to need to take additional coursework or teach yourself. Did I just bum any of you out? Not yet. So this is also why I use
have a
YouTube.
question.
Yes, please.
So, oh, sorry. Can you hear me still?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. So this is just a confusion on my part. So I'm really sorry if this is silly. But in science ed, we have to take qualitative and quantitative methods classes.
Mm-hmm.
And so I know that I can't do quantitative methods without the knowledge that I'm learning here. But is there such course as like I took a qualitative methods? Is there a quantitative methods classes and that would help me with my research, or should I take these classes to help me with my research?
These are quantitative methods classes. So that quantitative methods to me is a synonym that means the application of statistics to quantitative data. So this class is a quantitative methods class. The label intermediate statistical methods is literally decades old. We went to update the course description for this. Would you like to guess the last time the course description was updated? 1974. I'm not exaggerating. It's a bad label because we're not learning statistics for statistics' sake. That's a whole nother department, because those are people who are learning things in that way so that they can develop new statistics and new methods of estimation and like the nitty gritty. This is the application of statistics to quantitative data, which to me is the definition of quantitative methods. Okay, thank you for the question. And scary. I'm not sure which part is scary, but the statistics. It's a word. It's a very triggering word. I feel like it's just it just conjures up like in people in a way that methods is a lot more friendly. Like methods is a way of doing something, and it is. This is a way of analyzing quantitative data. The name is the scary part. Thank you for clarifying. Yes. I may be scary to some, but that's not the vibe I'm going for here. I'm going for, yes, you can use quantitative methods, but it's going to take more than this. So what I don't want you to do is to grab, say, a longitudinal data set and use all the models that we learned in this class and submit it for a paper and have someone go, oh my God, you totally used the wrong model. I want to put a plug in that like independent samples is what we're focusing on this semester. But absolutely everything that we're learning is a key building block of everything that is to come. So this is just a jumping off point. Okay. Other questions about independent versus dependent?
I think I have a clarification question.
Sure. Let's see what's next.
Okay, so independent dependent variables would mean there could be a lot of different opinions, perspectives, and people, giving feedback, whatever that is, where you're collecting data. And then an independent sample is where you're only having that one group, like this like group of people, and you're collecting data on that like group rather than like a parent versus a teacher. It's only the teachers.
Okay. Not quite to the first and yes to the second. You just highlighted that, yes, they're independent and dependent are also used to describe roles of a variable in a model. And I think that was what you were talking about. So if you think about an independent variable versus a dependent variable, those are independent variables are typically variables that you manipulate or assign in an experimental setting. They can also be predictors in a model. And then dependent variable would be the outcome that you're hoping to have changed by your manipulation, or the outcome that you're hoping to predict with your additional information.
Okay.
And so this is yet one of many, many, many instances in which people use very similar words to mean different things in statistics. And it is quite unfortunate, but we've just stumbled into that sort of area. We will have independent variables and we will have dependent variables. One dependent variable in the model at a time in these models, and multiple independent variables. But it's independent samples is the key thing here. It's the idea that it's just teachers, like you said.
Thank you for that.
Yes, thank you. And where that could go wrong is, let's say that you're collecting data from just teachers at give me the name of a local high school.
West.
West. All right, you're surveying West teachers. Okay, cool. What if not enough West teachers show up, and you need to go get teachers from where else is another high school?
City High.
City High. Okay, so now do you think the West teachers are going to be more similar than the City High teachers?
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe. It's an empirical question. So
Right.
in that case, you'd still be okay with this class because you could put in a variable for whether they came from West or whether they came from City, and you'd be okay.
Okay.
But what if you sent out the survey nationwide and you had like 200 schools to get enough teachers for your sample? Then you're talking about dependency beyond what you can handle with just controlling for it as a predictor. And that's where you're got to be headed into 6272 here.
Oh, got it. I got it. Okay. So basically we're working with what we can control a lot more.
Control or measure, I would say.
Measure.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, it generally like 10 to 15-ish in terms of the number of groups you can control in a model without it turning into something more complicated is a rule of thumb that people use.
Okay. Thank you.
And if anyone has questions about their specific research or settings that they're used to, that you want to clarify whether this will work for that, I'd be happy to entertain those questions. I did have people talk about N of 1 designs. So if you collect one person and a whole bunch of observations, then that person is your sample. So this actually could work in that setting so long as you only have one person. But if you want to combine a lot of data from one person across multiple people, then you'd have to have a variable in the model to control for who was who. And then once you control for that, then you're good with the dependency. Okay, so, and then summary slide, which should be self-explanatory. All right, I am going to hit